my blank page? And I want to talk a little bit about some things I skipped in Module 4. And I've talked about them a little bit, but I think we need to revisit them before we do today's exit ticket, okay? So the back of your paper is where I want you to write this. The reason I want you to write it on the back is so when you're doing your work today, if you can't remember what we talked about, you can just turn it over and look at the back, and it will be right there, okay? So we're going to divide this into two sections. So I want you to draw a line horizontal across your page. So keep your page vertical, and we're going to talk about one type of problem and then another type of problem. Okay, so while we're at it, I want you to draw two tape diagrams. They don't have to be the same size or anything. And I think I'm going to move mine over just a little bit. Move them over here, okay? All right, so the first type of problem I want to talk about, you know, we've been dealing with fractions, haven't we? I want to talk about a whole number times a fraction, okay? So when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about, let's say, 2 times 1/2. Write that problem down. And you can write it beside your tape diagram. And then the other problem I want to talk about is 1/2 of 2. Now don't write of, because what sign can we substitute? Multiplication. Good. Just like groups of, copies of, or just plain of. Okay? So I want you to write these two problems down, and then I'm going to show you the difference in those two. Move that down a little bit. Okay, so the first one means 2 copies of 1/2. Look up here. 2 copies of 1/2. So I want you to put copies here. 2 copies of 1/2. And so on this tape diagram, I'm just going to draw my 2 copies of 1/2. And what would the question mark be here? 1. Okay? So my answer would be 1, because 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1 whole, right? So I could rewrite this problem as repeated addition. So go ahead and write that down beside. And it's 1 whole. Okay, got that? Right. So now, there's another way to think of this. So I want you to write the word of somewhere. You could think of it as, what is 1/2 of 2? 1. So your question mark is going to be 1. 1/2 of 2 is 1, correct? If I'm going to rewrite this, there's really no other way I would rewrite it. I'm just going to think 1/2 of 2 is 1 whole. On this one, I can rewrite it or think about it as repeated addition, couldn't I? So the answer is going to be 1 on both of those. They're the exact same problem, just written differently and drawn differently. Okay? So we used a little trick to do these types of problems. Let's just do a few more. 1/2 times 3. Do you remember our little trick? Abdiel, what do you think it was?
Multiply the numerator?
You're right. You're going to multiply the numerator times the whole number.
Yeah.
So 1 times 3,
3.
and you're going to keep your denominator the same. Because we're thinking of repeated addition, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
When you add, do you change your denominators?
No.
No. Okay? So 3 halves, and then I could turn that into 1 and 1 half, couldn't I? Okay, let's do another one. Let's do 5 times 1 half. Okay, I'm going to pull a stick on this one. How about Dara? Dara, what's our little trick to solve this one?
You're going to multiply 5 times 1.
Okay,
That's 5.
so 5 halves.
It'd be 4.
So there's another way to do it. You could do 5 divided by 2 and get your whole number with your fraction. Okay? So 2 times 2 is 4, right? So that gives me 2 and 1 half. Okay? So I would write 2 and 1 half. All right? Now, it's very important that you notice when there's a whole number, because you don't multiply the denominator when there's a whole number. And you just have to remember that. But I want you to think back to copies of, and that might help you. Okay? All right, so that's one thing we skipped. How do you feel about this? 5, 4, 5? Okay? But what happens if you get a problem like this, and now your brain is all jumbled up because you can't remember what in the world you're supposed to do next? Okay? So write down underneath the line, write 1 half times 1 half. I'm going to show you how they're different. They're different in the way we draw them. Okay? So I'm going to draw 1 half times 1 half, and I want you to draw it too. I'm going to draw it right over here. So go ahead and draw a rectangle. It can be any size or square, whatever. And you're going to shade 1 half. Go ahead and do the lines for today. So this is 1 half, isn't it? And I want you to go ahead and put a bracket and write 1 half. So that illustrates my first fraction right here, 1 half. I illustrated it. Now I'm going to change the color of my pen. And I'm going to show 1 half going horizontally. On this one, watch how I shade it. I'm going to go the opposite direction with my lines. And I'm doing that for a reason. So go the opposite direction with your lines. All right, and this one's going to be 1 half also. So when I take 1 half times 1 half, it's like I'm putting the whole thing together with the other shape, okay? So my answer is just going to be right here where there's x's. So my answer is 1, and then how many equal parts do I have?
4.
And you know, because I've taught you, you can multiply straight across when you're multiplying 2 fractions, right? Now what you got to do is you got to try your hardest to keep your whole number times a fraction separated in your mind from your fraction times a fraction, because they look differently, completely different, don't they? Okay? So when you're looking at a whole number, think copies of, because that's the easiest way to figure it out. When you're looking at fractions, think, oh, I'm combining them. It's kind of like a basket weave, isn't it? Where you combine it. Yeah, it is. So maybe this will help you. Let's multiply a couple more fractions just for the fun of it. Let's do 3/4 times 3/4. We did that one yesterday. 9/16. You guys agree?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do 1/3 times 4/5. 4/15. And we just had a sprint, maybe last week, that was kind of like this, okay? So this is actually much easier to think about than your whole number times your fraction, isn't it? You have a completely different strategy. When you take a whole number, think copies of it. When you do fractions, think about your basket, how you're just combining them, Okay? So we're going to, instead of doing the problem set like they suggest, I'm going to just give you some problems to do. That's going to prepare you for your exit ticket, okay? So what the exit ticket says is they want you to draw the dimensions that are given to you. So let's practice for this. Let's do 4.5 units times 2.5 units. And we're going to have to think about how will we draw this. Okay, so the first thing you need, and I want you to leave yourself enough room to do some work on the side and top and bottom of your rectangle. Don't make it as big as the space there, okay? But don't make it so small you can't write in it either, because you're actually going to have 4 sections in this. So maybe a little bigger, yeah. Okay, so I always start with my fractions. Repeat that after me.
I always start with my fractions.
Okay, so my fractions are 1/2 and 1/2, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to start by drawing those along the edges and labeling them 1/2 units. Okay, now all I have to do, where do I write this 4?
In the middle. Top.
On the top, good. Where do I write the 2?
Left side.
On the left side, very good. Okay, so now comes my multiplication. Ooh, I forgot my units, didn't I? Okay, so 2 times 4.
8.
So I'm going to write 8 units squared, and that's the area of this rectangle inside the rectangle. Okay? Now I want you to really stop and think. 2 times 1/2. 2 copies of 1/2.
It's 1 whole.
1 whole. 1 unit squared. Okay, are you ready? 1/2 times 4.
8. 2. 1 and 1/2.
Okay, let's think it through. So we've got 1/2 times 4. So it's going to be 1/2 of 4. 2. Now here's the easiest way to do it. Are you watching? 1 times 4. So 4/2. If you said 4/2, you were right. Okay? So 4/2, 4 divided by 2 equals 2 units squared. You know, it's easier to figure out what I'm supposed to do if I think copies of when I see a whole number. But this was quite simple. What's 1/2 of 4? We already know it's 2. Okay? So now I'm going to highlight these. Light green, I think. Can you see the highlight and still see the numbers? Oh, I forgot the last one. 1/2 times 1/2.
1.
And I've got to write it outside because I don't have enough room. Okay, and I'm going to highlight that one. So now I'm going to write an addition problem to add all these up. Okay? And I'm going to do it up here because I'm out of room. So I've got 8, and I want everyone to write it, plus 1, plus 2, plus 1/4. And that one I don't think we need 3 equal signs because I think we can add the whole thing in our heads, can't we? I'm going to pull a stick. Beverly.
11 and 1/4.
Okay, so 8 plus 3 is 11. Add 1/4 on there. Good. Okay? So that's the first problem we're going to do. Now I'm going to give you another one. This one's a little different. Okay? All right. So I'm going to give you 1 3/4 by 3 1/4. Okay? So this one, this rectangle, the top is going to be shorter than the side, isn't it? So I'm going to make it like this. We're going to do 3 problems and then I'm going to let you do your exit ticket. Okay, so what do I start with? I'm pulling a stick. George B. What do I draw first? Huh? The 1/4, and it's down here. Okay? And I also draw the other fraction. What's it? 3/4. So like this, maybe? Okay. Okay, now all I have to do is put my whole numbers on there. Where does the 1 go, Miguel?
Top,
Top. And where does the 3 go, Miguel?
the side.
Good. Now we're just going to multiply. So I've got 3 units times 1 unit. 3 units squared. Good. I have 3 times 3/4. Don't say the answer. I'm going to pull a stick. Lexi, think copies of 9/4. Go ahead and leave it as an improper fraction. The reason I'm telling you that is because observe, they leave it as an improper fraction. They don't change it to a mixed number till the end, and then they just have to change one fraction to a mixed number. Okay? So now I'm going to do 1/4 times 1. 1/4. And 1/4 times 3/4. So it's going to look like this. Three sixteenths. Very good. Did you visualize the basket? Okay. So now that I've got that much done, add. So I'm going to highlight the things I'm going to add. Okay. Now I've got some things I can add ahead of time, don't I? I'm going to write this down. 3 plus 9/4 plus 1/4 plus 3/16. Okay? And I'm not going to be able to do equals, equals, equals. Did you write that down? Here's the thing. The kids that struggled from block 2 didn't write down what I wrote down, and so then they couldn't go back and look at it. All right? So what can I add ahead of time?
You can add 9/4 and 1/4.
Okay, so I can do 3 plus 10/4, can't I? Plus 3/16. Okay. So should we change 10/4 to a mixed number now?
Yes.
Okay. So some of you already know how to do it. 4 times 2 is 8. So 2 and 2/4.
Yeah, true.
So 2 and 2/4 is the same thing as,
3. No.
well, let's just leave it 2 and 2/4. So are you out of room to write like I'm out of room to write?
No.
Oh, good. So I'm going to have to do it over here, okay? So my problem I have now is 3 plus 2 and 2/4 plus 3/16, right? Equals, equals, equals. So I'm going to do, I think I'm going to do, that didn't give me enough room, did it? I think I'm going to do 5 plus here. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I added those whole numbers ahead of time, didn't I? Dara, can you get the door,
What
please?
about the...
Okay, just a minute. Now I've got to add 2/4 plus 3/16.
Keep 16 the same.
Okay, so keep 16 the same. So I don't think I'm going to, oh, I can write out there. Can you see it?
Yeah.
All right. So I've got 2/4 plus 3/16, and Abiel said keep 16. So 4 times what equals 16? 4. So that'll be 8/16. So that makes sense. It's half, right? Times, or plus 3/16. So we've got 5 plus, what's 8 plus 3? 11/16. So my answer is 5 and 11/16. So that's the answer right here. Okay? So that's 2 different kinds of problems, all right, with 2 different fractions. Now I'm going to give you one that's going to prepare you for your exit ticket. Sound good? Okay. So let's go down to rectangle C. And I'm going to write the measurements. it's actually going to be a square. Okay, so 3.5 by 3.5. So I'm going to draw a square. Don't make it too small because you want to be able to write, okay? And what do I start with, boys and girls?
Half. 3.5.
I'm going to start with my halves. I'm going to make a square. A little bigger. Okay. So I'm going to start with my halves. I'm actually going to make it big enough so I can write something in there. So this will be 1/2. This will be 1/2. And what do I put on my other spots?
3.
3. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to try and just fill this in. Okay? I'm going to push pause while you fill it in. Okay, so cadence. What goes in this area right here? 9 square units. Very good. Okay. So Eurydia, I'm looking at this area right here. Okay, what's a half times a half? Oh, I'm sorry. A half times 3. You're right. It's 3 halves. Sorry. Should I keep that as 3 halves for a minute? I think I will. Yeah. Let's just keep it there. Okay. And then I'm going to do a half times 3. Chloe, what's that?
A half times 3.
Equals 3 halves. Good. And then we did a half times a half. What was that?
1/4.
1/4. Okay. And those all should have unit squares. Okay, so my task now is to add them all up. So I'm just going to write, and I've got to have 4 numbers. I'm not sure our answer is going to be 4, Caleb. Okay, so that gives me 9 plus 6 halves, right? Okay, so I'm just going to rewrite it out here. 9 plus 6 halves plus 1/4. Now, is there anything else I can do before I, huh? I could, but I don't think I'm going to have to. 6 halves?
You can do 4 and then add.
Beverly, she says change 6 halves to a mixed number. Yeah. But it's not going to be a mixed number, is it? What's it going to be? 3. 6 divided by 2 equals 3. So now I have this problem. Are you ready for this? 9 plus 3 plus 1/4. Which is equal to what for me? 12 and 1/4. So we didn't have to change the denominators, did we? Okay. So here's what I want you to do. We're going to look at that came out of somebody's shoe. We're going to look at the exit ticket. I'm going to get you started, but not very much. You ready for this? Okay. All right, now I want you to make it big enough that you can actually see what you're doing. So, who said it's a square? How do you know?
Because they're both the same.
They're equal, the length and the width are equal. So make yourself a square. And then to solve this thing, you're going to do something plus something. You're going to have 4 somethings, aren't you? 1, 2, 3, 4. Because remember, once you draw your lines in here, you're going to have 4 sections that you have to add up. This is it doesn't matter. What do I always start by drawing first? My what? My fractions, my halves. Okay, so you can bring that to me when you're done.